like to try things out first. So, you know, with the cloud, for example, we are trying that out on an IT level, and we're talking about it with the business because we hope that we save some money with it, but we're actually trying things out first. So that's one of the strategies that we use. And then really just working with other IT groups in the industry, trying to stay on top of trends, trying to talk about what some of our other competitors are doing and bring that into LionsGate.
Right. For us, it's about just being a part of it. So we're once iPads started to come in, the first thing we did is pilot, script reading on iPad. We spent a lot of time printing out scripts. Now we put them on these iPads. We try to secure them, that kind of thing. And so just living it and sort of breathing it was our sort of way to start to bring about the change and so far.
Yeah, in our group, one of the things that we try and do is get people to think about fail fast. In a big organization, it's in a well-sequenced, very organized, intake process focused organization. It's hard to give yourself a chance to experiment with things and do that. So we really make sure that we emphasize that we give people the license to fail and try new things. And so we spend a lot of time really trying to get that sort of baked into people's mentalities, and I think that that's a big piece. Having leaders within the organization who think that and breathe it too are really exciting. And we try and spend a fair amount of time in forums where we essentially promote people bringing their ideas. So this is not a top-down approach to how technology works. It's just not going to work like that. So making sure that if we start finding nifty ideas, people find an opportunity in some cloud-based infrastructure, Amazon Web Services or Azure, you call it, or one of those things, that we're actually giving people, go off and open up a test account. I mean, the stuff's not super expensive to play around in if you find something interesting. If we're working on a social platform, go ahead and download Cassandra and leverage Cassandra. So, I mean, I think on the technology side, it's making sure that we've got people having the right dialogue and the listening, and not just being told that, this is the feature we want you to develop. And so that's back to that partnership. And I think, you're never going to be able to stay in front of all of them. But again, from the engineering focus, unless you have interesting problems to solve and you give engineers the opportunity to have creative license around them, it's going to be a fairly stagnant organization. And so we really try and spend time making sure that those things bubble up in circles. And then if something trends out or looks like it's got enough, it's got to a tipping point, then to push that through an organization, usually you move away from the carrot a little bit more into the steamroll mode, right? And you get people in there to actively pursue it.
It sounds like you're doing we don't do this really well at Sony Pictures, but when I was at General Electric, we did a pretty good job of it. And I forget who the author is. I was at a conference recently, and he was talking about it was kind of like the conscious self and the self-conscious self. You have to think of the conscious self as like a little man, and the unconscious is like a big elephant. And no matter how much that little guy steers and tries to steer the elephant, they never can. And when he talks about in large organizations, you always pull everyone together. You have a big team meeting. You explain the change. You explain what's going to happen. But people don't really absorb that. You really got to make them feel something. It sounds like that's some of what you're doing about letting people have their hands on. And the example he gives, he talks about like the warnings on cigarettes. Here in the U.S. we have Surgeon General, like whatever. But if you go over to Europe, they've got like gangrene and all sorts of gruesome stuff, and it has a really visual impact. So again, my current students culture is hard because it's very creative, it's very distributed. It's hard to get kind of wide scale change, and there's always change anyway, so it's kind of baked into the culture. But at GE, we're actually pretty good about kind of making change you can feel. And there's actually one Disney story. I forget, it's the former head of the theme parks talked about. There was some new ride or something, and it's something about tigers, and he couldn't get whatever the board was to do it. And finally, he actually had a board meeting set up, and he walks his board in, and in the room was an actual tiger. And whatever it was, he got his pointer. I mean, it's something that take people out of their right. But and they were
wild animals.
Well, and
everyone was Talladega Nights.
Everyone was taken back, and everyone was doing so. Like for example, we're doing a big change. We did a big outsourcing last year, and now we're reinvesting kind of employee talent programs. And we've had a couple all hands where people came in and tried to tell us what their prioritization was, and we couldn't get it. Last meeting, what we did, because I just come from hearing this guy talk, is when everyone walked in the door, we handed them 3 pieces of Monopoly money. And everyone, we came in, had them present, we had 5 options for things that we could do to invest in our employees in the next year. And we could really only do 2 of them. So at the end of the meeting, they actually had to spend their dollars. And what was 6 or 7 months of kind of flailing, all of a sudden we've got 2 programs picked, and there's a lot of momentum behind it. So again, that's something that they can feel, touch, be creative about it, have fun with it. I don't know, that's something that I've seen that works pretty well.